So I want to provide full transparency about a piece of information that I'm not hiding whatsoever. In fact, I'm being open about it because it caused the problem with medical neglect for me. It caused me to be neglected for several years when I was falling ill, which was damaging and which ended up, that's why I've ended up how I have now, especially. It happens to a lot of people, but in my case, there was this particularly brutal thing that happened to me that kind of started it off, and it was just really horrible timing because I was getting sick at that time and I was framed. So what happened is that in 2013, I was mislabeled by an ignorant psychiatrist with factitious disorder, which means it's basically Munchausen with yourself. You do things to yourself to make yourself sick, which is actually impossible for me to do. Like, I can't do that to myself. That is genetic. My problems the problems that I have, are all related to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a genetic disease that you can't possibly fake. So framing it that way, is really shallow and shows that doctors are not looking into the symptoms, and are not intending to. So this mislabel was made, though, by a doctor who's actually quite infamous for victimizing people. So I'm not the only one who has been basically tried to challenge her and then was mislabeled with something nasty. That's basically what happened. And if you go to her Rate My MD, a lot of people have said some pretty terrible things about their experience with her. So I'm not alone in my experience. But even though this woman only spent like 40 minutes with me and was quick to throw a very serious label into my file, doctors are not seeing the report. The report that she made was an obvious attack. Like, anyone with half a brain would actually read it as an attack. It looks unprofessional. It looks like it's mocking me, attacking me in every way. It looks mean and cruel to me and to anyone who knows me and cares about me, friends and stuff. They were like, she's insane. Like, this is crazy. So, she shouldn't really be allowed to practice. And I don't mind saying her name. I'm not afraid to say her name. Her name is Dr. Kiri Sims. And she labeled me or diagnosed me with factitious disorder in 2013 and even convinced my doctor. And my doctor sat me down and tried to convince me that this was my problem. You just have to accept it and all this. And I was sitting there with my dad and we're going, no, this is crazy. What is your this is crazy. We're not accepting this. It was very gaslighting because as I was falling ill with these symptoms, the report was almost trying to gaslight me to tell me that I was doing something because I was that crazy, that ill, that mentally deranged, that I was somehow doing something to make these symptoms happen. And that's so psychologically abusive to do to somebody. So it had that effect on me, especially at first. And I was hurt and shocked. And I was like, no, this couldn't be. This is not, like, I'm sick. I know how I feel. And I'm not doing anything to myself, especially, the accusation of doing something to myself was beyond hurtful. Like, I can't even describe to you how horrible that felt. But on top of how it made me feel, it had a profound effect in the medical system because it went into my file. And the doctors, again, are not reading the report. They're just looking at the diagnosis. And once they see a diagnosis like that, they're not going to take anything that's happening to you seriously. You know, it's, and I'm not the only one with Ehlers-Danlos who's accused of that. There was a girl in New Zealand, a woman in New Zealand who had a similar situation to me. And it was so bad that she was having like rectal bleeding from, because we get that, we have sensitive digestive tracts and we have prolapses and bleeding and stuff. And they were scoping her to see if she had poked herself to cause it. Like, this is how convinced that they were about her supposedly being factitious. And the poor woman, like, I felt for her so much because she was so ill from being untreated, like not treated. This is what happened to me for 3 years when I was falling ill. And I was so depressed that I wasn't taking the best care of myself. And then my pancreas ended up affected, and I ended up developing pancreatic insufficiency and malabsorption and serious digestive issues and getting very thin, which was a combination of the Ehlers-Danlos getting worse and affecting my GI system and my shock and anxiety and depression and, you know, terror at what they were trying to label me as. It was like she set off a witch hunt. You know, it's like she accused me of being a malevolent witch, and that is how they were treating me. And because I am on the autism spectrum, I look away a lot when I'm talking because I'm thinking and stuff. They're taking that as part of the being manipulative and making up a song and dance. It was literally framing my autistic symptoms as being acting factitious. It was beyond horrible. Like, I can't even, it was a horrible traumatic time, and it eventually led me to have a complete autonomic system crash while I was on a trip. I totally crashed. My blood pressure went crazy, whatever. It was very stroke-like, and it was because of my health getting worse, not getting any help, and being so distressed by being treated this way and labeled this way. And while I was stuck in England, I saw a top-notch Ehlers-Danlos specialist because they were refusing to diagnose me back home, of course. They had framed me as factitious. They wouldn't treat me. They wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't, even genetics. You know, I got to genetics in my city, and they weren't willing to diagnose me, even though I presented with obvious symptoms, obvious Ehlers-Danlos symptoms and the elastic skin. They even said something crazy like, oh, well, because of her complex mental health history, she probably lied about being more overweight before and then she lost weight, so that's why she has loose skin. Well, I'm sorry, but why does it snap back like that? Why is it elastic then? It doesn't make any sense. So they were making stupid reasons about why I didn't have BDS because Sim's report literally said, don't diagnose her with things that she might even have, because she might try to make them worse, factitiously. Okay, that's not even possible. Ehlers-Danlos gets worse. It just progresses. So what's scary about that is that it gaslights the natural progression of my disease. And it just gaslights the whole thing. It even gaslights anyone reading the diagnosis. So anyway, I was properly, when I was stuck in England, I was treated properly without the bias being there. I wasn't able to fly. I took a flight from Scotland to England and I had really bad tachycardia again. So British Airways said, you're not flying on the 9-hour flight. We don't feel comfortable flying you. You have to figure out what's going on with you. And, and it was serendipitous because I was stuck there. My friends went, oh my God, she's stuck there, and put up an emergency GoFundMe. I stayed with friends while I was there. I was blogging. I was doing a blog about late diagnosed female autism called A Girl Outside the Box. Subscribers that I knew from my blog that lived in England were kind enough to help me when I was there, and ended up seeing Dr. Hakim, and he diagnosed me properly with Ehlers-Danlos. And not only did he diagnose me properly, he said, "You clearly have it. You look like you have the skin. It is like obvious. You have the soft skin that even looks kind of stretchy. You have the facial features, the teeth, the crowded teeth and the high palate, like the everything. Like you have your veins." And then he called the way I was treated back home disgusting. And it was a journey from there, because when I got back home initially, they would not accept it. They didn't want, I got home with a report that said, "I told you so," basically. But the first thing that they wanted to do was say that I must have orchestrated the stroke-like event, or orchestrated everything so that I could diagnose this, shop, and get what I wanted. That's how they framed it. And people who are bigoted and xenophobic and whatever are going to keep saying this kind of crap. It doesn't matter how much I try and prove. I'm sure there are going to be people out there that are going to say that. The medical system now has backed off. They believe me now. They have backed off. They apologized, but they're not offering me treatment. And why are they not offering me treatment? Because there really isn't much treatment established in this system. And that's what they're trying to gatekeep, using gaslighting as a tool. And you know what? It doesn't work, because people get sick anyway. And usually, sadly, what happens is they get severely ill. They get palliative care, like painkillers and fluids, like I'm getting, and they go silent. They don't have a voice anymore. They go into care homes, or, but first they're abused and gaslit all the way down until that happens. And then finally, when they get really sick, the medical system finally decides to accept that they're sick. But by then it's like too late, and they're too expensive to treat, and that's the position I'm in. But I'm saying you need to establish treatment and get people better and back to decency. And I especially am not going to accept living like this, because I was dragged down the pavement by my hair with this label. I'm not hiding this mislabel. I put an annotation package on my file that shows my correct diagnoses. And yes, I do have mental health diagnosis. It is called complex PTSD. Of course I have PTSD, complex PTSD. I was diagnosed late with autism. I had a painful childhood, very painful adolescence. I had to survive on my own. And then I go from the frying pan to the fire here, being treated terribly poorly in my adulthood by the medical system when I'm trying to reach out to them for help. And it started when I was 18, 19, when I was going through a mental health crisis, and they treated me really badly back then. They almost diagnosed me on the spectrum. They said, at that time I was very naive, very childlike, and, awkward, and you could almost see it. And one psychiatrist did say, query pervasive development, issue. Like, she's bright, but she's kind of quirky and childlike, and has, doesn't always make eye contact and stuff. But another psychiatrist overtop him, who had more seniority, kind of shut it down, because they don't like to diagnose autism in adults either, because there isn't a lot of services and help. So there's a lot of gaslighting and gatekeeping that goes on with the kinds of issues that I have. And so because I tried to fight for help, I was basically attacked. And that attack, has left me scarred. And that's why, that's what my song's about. Scarlet, which is, in the name that I chose for myself now. I still go by Rosie, because I always have, because my full name is Scarlet Rose. But Scarlet, because my scars are lit. You may have scarred me. You battered me, you scarred me, but I am going to speak out about it. Like, I'm going to tell my story about how this happened. And I'm not ashamed or hiding anything, because the reality and the truth is that I'm very real. What's happening to me is very real. And everything that I share about is very real. And it's like they can't handle it, so they need to try and, frame it and gaslight it. And people might continue to do that. They might continue to do that because they don't want, they're being phobic about rare disease and Ehlers-Danlos and autism in adults and all kinds of stuff. And, I'm not, and just for the record, I'm not I'm not far left. I'm not like extreme, attacking all the parents of autistic children. And unfortunately, some of us are doing that too much, and I don't think that's the right approach. And I'm kind of in the middle kind of a person. I advocate for autism in adults and children, but I choose to do it in my own way. And I just don't think that some of the ways people are doing it are very helpful. And I'm not trying to be a victim. Like, I would love to work. I would, I kind of think, like I said in other videos, that people with disabilities and illnesses should be empowered by optimized care that can optimize their functionality considering their condition and put them in the best position in life. That's what I think, and if you have to use mobility aids to help you or whatever, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. I'm not trying to be an internalizing ableist. I just think, it's the humane thing to do is to have optimal care and to just be truthful in assessing and treating people. All this gaslighting and all this gatekeeping is going to, eventually come back at them. I'm going to speak out. I encourage others to speak out. And anyway, my bottom line is full transparency. I was mislabeled with factitious disorder. It's absolutely bunk, obviously. It's been proven as bunk at this point. And, but that's what started the abuse. And it took years to, fight that label. And those years were precious time for my health, and I lost that time. And I believe that the untreated autoimmune issues and the severe malabsorption that happened, like, you should have seen me. I looked so scary. I was like a bag of bones. I wasn't even getting, I had to beg one internal medicine doctor to help me. Like, this isn't a video about the entire timeline and the story, but I had to beg, one person to listen to me and help me. And my dad and husband had to, threaten to sue them if they didn't stop abusing me. And quite frankly, I should have sued them. If I'd sued them for, what the damage, because it was malpractice, it was negligent. She labeled me factitious while overstepping a pre-existing autism diagnosis, which had been made by thorough, tests and looking at my childhood video footage, and even a government program verified it. And a dermatologist, diagnosed my skin as definitely being Ehlers-Danlos, and she still made this. So it was negligence. And unfortunately, our silly justice system here in Canada gives a 2-year time limit. And during those 2 years, I was too sick to fight, and I was too, bewildered and trying to not drown to, have the wherewithal to form a lawsuit. So it's kind of unfair that I can't. But, at this point, unfortunately, I can't. So the best thing I can do is tell the story and, tell the story so that other people might come forward who've had similar things happen to them. And, so that we can expose the kinds of abuse that the medical system here does to people, which very much includes using psychiatrists as weapons to silence people who are chronically ill, as, all kinds of stuff, somatic conversion disorder, there's even a disorder now about having anxiety, severe anxiety about a real health issue, like out of proportion anxiety. Like, say you have a heart issue. Oh, but you're not having a heart attack. You're having severe anxiety about having a heart issue. How stupid is that? Like, you have a legitimate heart issue. So that's not how psychiatry is supposed to be used. Like, psychiatry was originally formulated to help people, and lately it's been doing a lot of harm. And that's unfortunate. I can speak to that. I've had the brunt of that. And yeah, people need to know about it.